I wanted to speak on this topic about mumble rap, quote unquote mumble rap. I see this term be thrown around quite a bit lately, especially in 2016, um, back whenever the Double XL cipher had come out, and it seems as if people that don't necessarily like or even agree with a certain genre of rap is now constituted as mumble rap. And I personally don't agree with that. Um, am I saying mumble rap exists? Yes, it does. Most certainly. Whenever somebody is attempting to make an effort of making somewhat of a lyrical song, but you can't understand anything of what this person is saying. By definition, that is mumble rap. But um, that doesn't mean that other genres are necessarily mumble rap. Just because you may not find the lyricism as complex as other people, or just because the lyrics of a particular rap song is not your forte, um, doesn't mean that it's mumble rap. So, to clear up some misconceptions, a lot of people, when they think of mumble rap, they obviously think of like early 2010s, during the SoundCloud era when like Little Pump, XXX Tentacion, and some others that had come out at about around that time. Um, I wouldn't. Those are actually two very good examples. I wouldn't necessarily call XXX Tentacion a mumble rapper. He's not. In fact, him and Little Pump are two different genres of hip hop altogether. XXX Tentacion has actually been coined as like the creator of trap metal, or gothic rap, however you would want to put it. And he was a very underground artist there for a while, and right up to the point of where he died, he was actually just starting to become, a part of the mainstream light. But Little Pump, on the other hand, he made a few good records there at the start and quickly faded into obscurity. He makes cameos every now and then in other rappers like videos, but he doesn't say anything. Like, I think for that song, Tory Lane's "When It's Dark," I think he makes a cameo in that music video, but he doesn't rap. He doesn't say anything. Um, would I constitute 6ix9ine as a mumble rapper? No, no, I wouldn't constitute 6ix9ine as a mumble rapper. But that also isn't saying that his genre of music or his lyricism specifically is harder than someone else's or is easier than someone else's. I'm not saying that. I'm going very strictly by the definition of mumble rap, and you know what constitutes to me as mumble rap, I would say, would have to be God, what was his name? The guy that made Panda, Designer. Yeah. Okay, so Designer is a weird case, right? Because he started off with the song Panda, and even in his double XL freestyle, you couldn't really understand anything of what he was saying. And even in his song Panda, the only coherent thing you could make out of that song was the hook, Panda. But as of lately, he has come out and has been a ghostwriter for people like Jake Paul, who got into rap. Uh, and there was even a sketch by the people who made Super Hot Fire that he was going up against who was it? Blueface? I think it was Blueface, and they had Designer behind him just doing ad libs, and yeah, he's a curious case because he started out as a mumble rapper, but I guess if he's being a ghostwriter now for other artists, then he obviously has to have somewhat of um, a little bit of a lyrical aspect, to his consistency. So going back to 6ix9ine, completely completely different, varying genres, right there. 6ix9ine, XXX Tentacion, and Little Pump. I mean, um, you could turn one of their songs on, and none of them would necessarily sound the same. They have different producers, they have different types of beats. Some are even paced differently. There are a lot of XXX Tentacion songs that either go super hard or they're super mellow. Um, the same, unfortunately, cannot be said for 6ix9ine. He raps as if his life depended on it. He's just yelling into the mic and saying the most vulgar things imaginable. But and of course, Lil Pump. Uh, I don't know. Like I said, he had some good tracks. There near the beginning of his year, but he also came out during a time of when Migos came out. By the time this video is being released, rest in peace, Takeoff. But he had some competition, right out, right out of the gate, and but the whole point of this video and what I'm trying to say to begin with is that although you might can say that, oh, well, XXX Tentacion, which I'm using him and 6ix9ine as an example of what I'm going to be saying. I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, well, XXX Tentacion is the most lyrical rapper ever, and I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, 6ix9ine, he's up there with Eminem. Nobody would say that. But one thing I've noticed, and I might rustle some jimmies with this opinion, but I do not think that a lot of lyrical rappers sound good. I mean, I know I'm gonna make some people mad by saying that, but hear me out. You know, I grew up on Tech Nine, Busy Bone, especially in North Carolina, PD Pablo, and I don't know. It's just like the older I got, the less tolerable I was towards more lyrical rap. I mean, it you have people like Tech Nine who I don't know, man. It's just you cannot make that sound good to me anymore. It just comes off as corny to me. Um, but in terms of like, I don't know, it's just people who pride themselves as being like a lyrical rap, quote unquote a lyrical rapper, are gonna have some of the trashiest fucking bars you've ever heard in your life. Like, Eminem during that one freestyle, where he dissed Trump and he was in a parking lot. That's an awfully hot coffee pot. Like, come on, dude. Like, you know, if I want to hear something lyrical, I want it to come from a genuine place. I don't want this fucking, knick knack patty whack, give a dog a bone fucking flow. You know what I mean? Like, and that's a huge reason why I like people like Nas. Nas is a very, very, very lyrical rapper, and a lot of his shit goes completely over people's heads. He's a legitimate poet, and his shit has been studied by like Oxford University. I mean, he when it comes to lyrical rappers, I mean, he has the throne. I think he definitely has the throne. Not to mean that he can't get technical. He can get very fucking technical with his rhyme schemes. Matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, he has one of the most complex rhyme schemes in the rap game today. Uh, Besides probably Papoose and Jay Electronica. So but he's been doing it longer than some of these other people. I think him and Papoose are about I think they've been in the game for about the same time, but I think Nas might be a little older than Papoose in the rap game. But just because I listen to these people doesn't mean that I necessarily just listen to lyrical people. You know what I mean? Like, I don't just sit here and just listen to Nas. I don't just sit here and listen to Papoose. I don't just sit here listen to Jay Electronica or even what's his fucking name? Pusha T. Yeah, that's his name, Pusha T. Pusha T is a very good lyrical rapper as well, but he comes from a very genuine place where his struggles are apparent. He raps about the drug environment that he used to be exposed to, and and how he came away from that. And you know, there are other rappers that I listen to, like Benny the Butcher. That dude is a fucking punchline rapper in and out. I mean, his schemes and some of his flows are fucking insane. But man, when it comes to people like Eminem and Tech Nine, don't get me wrong, I still bump Tech Nine, but I do not absolutely bump Eminem. I don't know what it is, man. I just don't like Eminem's rhyme schemes. I mean, he is a good technical rapper. I will not ever take that away from him. He's like one of the best technical rappers in the game, but the substance of his lyrics, it doesn't mean much to me. Like something he said something about Santa. You don't want to make the claws like, dude, come, like what? Like his subject matter is to me elementary, and he does have these schemes where like he'll get on like the topic of like baseball, but I don't like these random topics. I don't care for these random topics. And again, he is a phenomenal technical rapper, but I feel like if you put him in a booth and say, okay, make a song like this, something darker, something that is consistent, something that is, he'll go in there and do his thing like he did with was it Rihanna that made Love the Way You Lie or whatever. He'll do his thing, but you notice that like the style of rapping is different. Like when he's more serious, his style of rapping is far different than the fucking Music to Be Murdered By album. One of my favorite songs from him, matter of fact, um, is Darkness. He's rapping about the Las Vegas shooting in Nevada uh, during that uh, during that concert, Ariana Grande concert, and I like that song. I fucking love it. I find myself going back to that song every now and then and just listening to it, and it's a fucking vibe. I will not lie to you, it's a fucking vibe. but his other shit like Zeus and I just cannot get behind it. I can't. I just cannot get behind it, and it just comes off as corny to me, you know. And you know that's just my personal opinion. You know, people out there they like that stuff. There are people out there who probably listen to everything he has ever posted since the beginning of time. Um, to those people, you know, I congratulate you. You know, you can do what I cannot do. But you know, like when I get home from work, you know, I'm tired and I just want to like listen to something to kind of just make my mind uh go somewhere else. I listen to people like 6ix9ine. I listen to people like um you know, Benny the Butcher. I listen to people like um Scar Lord, fucking you know, people that are in the trap metal scene. Um you know, I listen to people like XXX I listen to you know, people like Ski Master Slump God, you know, people that you know, Kodak Black and people that just are not necessarily seen as like the best lyrical rapper. Like I just feel like this term is so unnecessarily thrown around when it doesn't need to be. You know, people just need to come to terms with the fact that there are different genres. There are different, you know, different forms of hip hop. And it kind of goes back to my last video that I made on rock and roll. And ironically enough, a lot of this stuff actually correlates because it's all music. Um, and I'll give you a very, very good example. So, during the mid to late 80s and even early 90s, you had a ton of fucking talented technical guitar players. You had people like Eddie Van Halen. You had people like Randy Rhoads. You had people like Yngwie Malmsteen. You had people like, you know, Jimi Hendrix in the past. You had people like Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath. You had people like Jimmy Page. You know, just all like these guitar lords that are just some of the best in the world. Um, which of course, you know, in the late '80s, early '90s, people like Slash were just coming up. You know, because Guns N' Roses had just released their first album. Would anyone believe me if I said that Kurt Cobain was the most influential? Now, that's a key term, influential. Would anyone believe me if I said that Kurt Cobain was the most influential guitar player of his era, of the 90s? Um, there's a big reason for why I say that, you know, and even technical players have come out and talked about this before. They said, you know, while Yngwie Malmsteen was out here, you know, and Randy Rhoads were making neoclassical guitar playing very, very popular. And while other people like Eddie Van Halen invented tapping, you know, finger tapping on the fretboard, and Slash and Guns N' Roses were more or less bringing classic rock back into the light. That out of all these people, out of all this talent in the you know mid to late '80s, early '90s, why was it Kurt Cobain who became the most influential? Well, there's a big reason for that, and that's because a lot of what him and his band stood for, Nirvana, they didn't like the mainstream. They tried their best to their ability to avoid said mainstream. And, and he did the first unplugged acoustic concert. And I believe it was on MTV. And he did something pretty revolutionary where, he I think it was from I think Bleach. Yeah, Bleach. So I think it was songs off of the album Bleach, which is a lot of people say that's like their favorite album. Understandable. But Kurt Cobain kind of noticed that the radio stations were only putting emphasis on a certain number of his songs. And they were only playing, the same maybe one or two or even three songs off of his album. And he wanted to know why. So whenever he went to MTV and he was due for like this concert, they were thinking, oh, well, play the songs that we hear on the radio. And, of course, Kurt Cobain, being Kurt Cobain, he goes out and says, yeah, yeah, sure, of course. They get out there on stage and he has an acoustic guitar, which a lot of people were not expecting. They were expecting to hear, teen spirit, I mean, and heart shaped box and, shit like that. And he plays the songs that were neglected by the radio station acoustically, which is the first. It's like one of the first times this has happened in rock and roll history. He plays it acoustic. He plays them acoustically, and people fucking lost their shit over this. They loved it. You know, he played the song "Something in the Way," which is like currently in the newest Batman movie. Made it very popular. It fucking blew up on TikTok. He played "Where Did You Sleep?" Where either I think it's called Where Did You Go Last Night?" or "Where Did You Sleep Last Night?" He played that one. That was a very underdog song. He played maybe three or four songs that were being kind of blackballed by the industry, and then after that, that's when he played the radio songs. So they put their acoustic guitars away, and then they hooked up their amps and shit, and then that's when they did it. So what I'm trying to say is that no, Kurt Cobain was not the most technical guitarist, but he was the most influential. And we can see the similarities between the rock community or the metal community and the hip hop community today. And honestly, I think a lot of rappers today should be speaking to rock and roll stars that came up in the mid to late 80s, early 90s, because these people have already done there and fucking been that. Um, the ripples that you're seeing in the hip hop community now almost verbatim happened in the metal community like 30, 40 years ago. And people are wondering, oh, why is this happening? Blah, 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 blah. It's because hip hop is on top now. Just like rock and roll and metal used to be the mainstream, used to be the status quo, and it's not anymore. And so now hip hop is experiencing the exact same ripple effects that the metal community was experiencing back in the day. There's a lot to be learned, if you go back and you look at the history of metal music or rock and roll, you'll read some very similar shit that is going on, right now in the hip hop community. And, you know, back in the day in the 1980s specifically, not so much the 90s, but the 1980s. The rock and roll community had this thing called cookie cutter bands, which nowadays in the hip hop community you would call them an industry plant, which is what Little Nas X likes to call himself, which I kind of believe. But you had these big fucking spray hair bands, and the most popular industry plant band had to have been Motley Crue. Literally, I mean it was, and almost nobody in the rock and roll community even likes Nikki Six, um, the main bassist for that band, and a lot of people they in the community back then just couldn't stand Motley Crue, and it's because they called him a quote unquote cookie cutter band. Oh, well, they're riding off of Kiss's coattails and shit like this. And what's happening now? In the rap community, what is happening now? We have industry plants. This shit isn't new. This shit is not new. It's been happening since the 80s. Basically, for me to wrap this video up, what I'm trying to say is that it's unfair. It's unfair to call another rapper that just happens to be a part of another genre a mumble rapper. It's just not accurate. It's not accurate at all. And, hip hop eventually is going to experience the same gatekeeping bullshit that the metal community and the rock community are experiencing right now, 30, 40 years down the road. I know people that are from New York City. I know grown ass men who live in New York City who, because of the East Coast West Coast beef between Tupac and Biggie, they still, to this day, have not listened to a Tupac song. Still, to this day, have not listened to a Tupac song because they fucking hated that guy back in the day. They fucking despised him, and vice versa. I'm sure there's a lot of old heads in California who still to this day have not heard a Biggie track, you know? And you know, understandable at the time, but it gets to a point, man, where it's just useless gatekeeping. It's just useless fucking gatekeeping. And in order to fully enjoy this thing we call hip hop, we have to fucking break down these walls and be like, hey, man, you're in your own lane, and although I don't like your music, I can respect your authenticity. You know what I mean? Obviously, when somebody gets up and, they're just gibbering fucking bullshit, um, like Iggy Azalea. Oh my god. No, she is not a fucking rapper. I'm sorry, but yeah, when somebody like Iggy Azalea gets up and they think they're like fucking a boss ass fucking no, 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 no. People like that need to be put in check. But just because you may not be a fan of trap rap or dark hip hop or gutter hip hop, well, I mean, people have their own preferences. To some people, gritty rap is fucking their forte. Other people, more high beat, fucking fast flow lyrical shit is their forte. You know, Nobody should be standing here and be like, oh, well, mine's better. Nobody should have a superiority complex. Nobody should have, you know, a gatekeeping mentality when it comes to the genre of music because it's only going to hurt the genre as a whole over time. You know, if you sit here and you gatekeep and you do nothing but talk down to these other people that are trying to be innovative, that are trying to make a new lane in this genre. If you do nothing but talk down to people that are trying to do something that is different from the normal formula, I mean, you're going to do nothing but kill every single opportunity that could have been made to make this genre better, to make this genre more up to date, to make this genre, tap in to a whole other group of people that wasn't even possible before, you know? And I see it happen a lot with a ton of, trap hip hop, trap rap communities, because the majority of them are underground. They're the majority of them are underground artists, and a lot of them feel like they cannot share the same stage as like Travis Scott or Drake or Kanye or Eminem. You know what I mean? Like, they're underground for a reason. It's because they feel like they need to be in their own little circle, because nobody else in the genre will respect them. Even though, if you take the blanket term away, if you take away the fucking genres, and you minimize this shit down to its simplest form, it's nothing but hip hop. At the end of the day, it's nothing but hip hop. So why are we treating it as something it isn't? You know? Why are we treating like, oh, man, this ain't hip hop. This ain't my idea of hip hop. This shit ain't hip hop. It is. It's just a different form. It's just a different fucking lane. And just because you don't subscribe to that lane, just because you don't subscribe to that genre, doesn't mean that it should change just because of you. You know, it doesn't mean that, you know, it doesn't make it any less hip hop just because it's different, just because it's innovative. And I see a ton of old heads. I see a ton of old heads nowadays be like, "Man, Tupac was the best rapper ever. He'd smoke anybody in a freestyle nowadays." And although that might be true, not everybody marches to the classic hip hop drum. A ton of people, they march to their own drum. Like, people, I see people complaining about, what constitutes as a freestyle. Can you write it on your phone and read it off? Does that constitute as a freestyle? Or do you have to just come up with it off the top of your dome? You know, back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, I'm sure that, having it come off the dome was a freestyle, but you have to understand that, things change, technology gets better, you know, shit innovates, people adapt, people overcome. And I just don't think you should be shitting on someone who wrote up a freestyle on their phone. Keep in mind, like I said, it'd be different if it was a ghostwriter, because they didn't write it. But you're gonna shit on somebody for opening up Notes, the Note app on their fucking phone, writing something up right quick, and then just not even rehearsing it, but just, you know, rapping it over a microphone, in one take. Like, there's nothing inhonorable about that. I mean, I personally don't see it. I personally don't see it. But to put somebody down and be like, you'll never be an Eminem, like you're putting them, you're comparing them to someone who they never even intended to be compared to. I mean, say what you want about 6ix9ine, but that dude made his own lane. He was making a shit ton of fucking money for what he was doing. Say what you will about XXX but that dude was in his own fucking lane. He was getting paid a shit ton of money for what he was doing, the songs he was putting out, the concerts he was hosting. He died in a black fucking BMW um sports car coming back from a bike shop. He was about to buy a fucking motorbike. The culture changes. Like I said in my last video, hip hop became the status quo for a reason, and it's because it's never stayed the same throughout the decades. 80s hip hop is not the same as 90s hip hop. 90s hip hop is not the same as early Y2K hip hop. Early Y2K is not the same as early 2010s hip hop. And now we're getting to a point where late 2010s hip hop or mid 2010s hip hop is not going to be the same as early 2010s hip hop. You know what I mean? So, anyways, I'm just gonna end the shit here, but quit your fucking gatekeeping.